Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast. This is a special episode, Big Bad Con recap. I am Kurt, and before I dig too deep into this, I want to say that this is going to be a different format than our normal show. So if you're new around here and you are just finding the show, this may not be the best example of what the show is always going to be like, but if you're a fan of Big Bad Con, or you are a fan of role-playing games, or you're a fan of some of these awesome people that I've got on this show, you're going to want to stick around and find out how Big Bad Con 2018 was. So let's do some introductions, and because if we go a little late, I want people to be able to drop out if they have to. So if you've got something you want to plug or anything like that, go ahead and introduce yourself and plug your thing. Let's start in the order of my thing here and start with Dave. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? This is Dave from Monkey Fun Studios.
Lauren, how are you feeling?
Oh gosh, I feel great. Thank you for asking. I'm Lauren. I know I'm frequently found on the Gauntlet stuff. If you're familiar with the Gauntlet, if not, you can look it up on gauntlet-rpg.com. And if you want to find me, I don't know why you would, but I'm at the Stray Kiwi on Twitter. And I am an editor of RPGs and other stuff, and I'm currently authoring a game about Alice in Wonderland that will be on Kickstarter soon, hopefully. That's where I'm at in life. I'm also operating on 10 hours sleep across the past 5 days, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to get all the apologizing in early, so that's
good. That's good. Spencer, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm good. I'm Spencer Stark. You can find me at Spencer Stark on Twitter and Instagram. And I also have a podcast called We Stayed Late, where we talk about pop culture and a whole bunch of fun stuff. So you can find me there.
All right. And I just want to let everyone know that the chat pops up in the thing, so it will show on stream if you type stuff. So heads up. Tomer, how are you feeling tonight?
Good. Hi, I'm Tomer. You can also call me Tomes, and I don't know. I guess I just play a bunch of games. I live in LA. I'm part of Gauntlet. I love all these story and indie games. I run games on demand at Strategicon, and that's about it. I don't know. There's probably more.
Yeah, that's enough. That's plenty.
It's never enough. There will be more. That's only the beginning.
Good Lord.
All right, and last but most definitely not least, Yoshi. Yoshi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm Yoshi Creelman, and you can find me at Yoshi Creelman. I'm also part of the Gauntlet and live in the greater San Francisco Bay Area.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. This, like I mentioned earlier, is Pixel Scandal Nerdcast. If you'd like to be able to find out more about this show, you can do so by going to pixelscandal.com and find out all sorts of useful information about the show. You can also email the show, pixelscandal@gmail.com. Or you can find us on social media at pixelscandal on most social medias. And if this gets put out as an audio feed, so if you prefer an audio format, you can find us on iTunes and Spotify and all sorts of podcatchers. And if we're not on yours, then friggin' email that email I said earlier, and we'll put it on there. All right. So we're not going to do all of the announcements bullshit that we normally do in this cast, because we have a very short amount of time and a lot to talk about, because this weekend was particularly amazing and I'm still reeling from it. This is our Big Bad Con recap, Big Bad Con 2018.
Woo!
So I wanted to put a little info about the con if you're not familiar with it. I don't know why you're watching this if you're not familiar with Big Bad Con, but if you're not, it is an annual tabletop live action gaming convention that takes place in Walnut Creek at the Walnut Creek Marriott. It's run by Sean Nittner and a wonderful crew of volunteer rangers, which is what I've been told they're called. And I want to just say a huge fucking thank you to all of the volunteers and staff and just anybody who helped anybody else this weekend, because you were all amazing and made this a great experience for all of us. And apparently their attendance is somewhere between 700 and 750 people, which is like double what I thought it was. That must be because of the private rooms, like you just don't see everybody, but that's a decent number. So I'm pretty impressed. But for now, I'd love to throw it out to everyone and just sort of we'll just do this like discussion format, right? I want to know, what is it about Big Bad Con that really sets it apart from other cons? Like why should you choose Big Bad Con, or what should you know about Big Bad Con that you wouldn't expect or is different?
Well, for me, it's my local gaming con, so I'm a big fan of that. So it's a relatively easy commute for me. But I think for the one of the things that really helps hold me on Big Bad Con is the focus on the games that I like to play, and just like how inclusive everything is. So like for me, there's a lot of PBTA games, a lot of story games, a lot of games that you're not going to see with huge marketing budgets, but like you might be able to recognize from other places on the internet and things like that. And those are kind of the touchy feely, sad games that I like to play.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely noticed that there is a bigger culture of inclusivity at this con than compared to anywhere else I've ever been, ever. Not just gaming cons, but anywhere. And I mean, I know a lot of you have been there more than me, but I was constantly impressed with the strides and the efforts that they made to make sure that everyone felt comfortable, and that there was no the culture. Everyone was normal at this con. Everyone who was there was the norm. Like nobody was treated as other, or at least not from my perspective. But of course, I don't have the best perspective on that kind of stuff. So I'm curious from the rest of you guys too, or and everyone, how you feel that Big Bad Con creates a culture of inclusivity.
I think that's like the first time I've been called normal in my life, so I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm sorry.
But no, no, you're so right. Like, I think I was really pleased to see the efforts that were taken to be quite public about inclusivity. So, like, I really appreciated that there were like pronoun tags and stuff from like she, her, he, him, they, them to like what is your pronoun? Fill it in. And like the like harassment policy and all of that stuff was like right front and center on the back of like the con pamphlet and that kind of thing. So it was nice to see like public representations of like creating a safe space. And yeah, I felt normal. So that was nice. Although I cannot claim that this is my local con. Uh, and yeah, despite that, yeah, I felt very welcomed.
I thought it was really cool how at each of the tables, especially in like the games on demand area, there was a printout of the X card and the lines and veils and like all the different safety mechanisms that we could use. And they were literally just sitting there for us. So like they were expected, they were normalized. And I haven't seen that anywhere else. So that was really, really cool to see.
I think like you guys have covered some of the basics there, and you know, like I've been going, I think this is my fourth one or so, and they've definitely incrementally improved every single time, which is great too. So you know, seeing that evolution is great because every year you see a little bit more, right? Yeah, I think every single game I was in, you know, there was always the, you know, pronouns as far as, you know, introductions and things like that. We didn't do it here right now because suddenly, you know, like it's hard to maintain that, I think, but that's something that you know is hopefully something that I mean I aspire to. I don't do it all the time at our look, even though we do have people there which are, you know, non-binary and whatever. We just, and oftentimes we don't even introduce ourselves. We just kind of like do the pitch and go into games. But it's something that I want to you know, try to be better about doing. So it's nice that all this stuff is inspiring in a way that it makes you kind of like want to take it back out to the real world, the other world that you're in. And I think there's also a couple of unsung heroes, which is great too, because like I know I got to talk to Alex McConaughey afterwards, and they did a lot of work over the whole weekend talking to people who were feeling anxious or hadn't been, treated in the best way or needed just a place to be able to release. And this is the first time they had kind of that position at the additional step, which is great. But it was an additional step that needed more than one person. And I think they got a little bit overwhelmed, and, like getting more people to help with that would be awesome. So, but the best thing is all these little things, there were people who had issues. And I think the important part is that people feel comfortable and supported being able to bring up those issues. And I feel that that's much better here than at any of the other cons I've seen. And so that way, and because the organizing staff takes that seriously, people feel supported bringing it up. People who are volunteering feel supported, saying, hey, we need more, and to just get better and better. So I'm just hoping that's what it is.
You totally reminded me of a thing, which I think was super clever, in terms of like creating a safe space for like pronoun usage and stuff, which was leaning real hard into the fact that we're all fucking gamers and are very thirsty for experience points. And so like it's like, I don't know if you're not familiar with Big Bad Con, when you get there, you can have a selection of playbooks to choose from. And these playbooks have had built into them like good con behaviors, like when you thank someone for doing something super great, you mark experience points, and when like you get 5 experience points, you get like a new playbook and stuff. And I noticed that on, I think it was one of them, it was like when you introduce yourself, mark experience points, but you get bonus XP if you like introduce yourself with your pronouns, and like just normalizing that culture of hey, I'm Lauren, I use she her, and you. So like, yeah, again, that was super lovely and a clever way of making gamers be good people, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Like by the end of the weekend, I felt like my name was Kurt, he, him. Like that's just what my name was by that point, and so it was really interesting to, like you said, we started this thing and nobody dropped pronouns, right? Because it's just not something you do outside of those spaces. And I mean maybe that's something that should I should start taking back into my normal life, like
Yeah, max of XP.
yeah. Mark XP. Were there any other ways or any other things that you've noticed that really?
I was gonna say I wanted to talk about the community really quick, because it was my first time going to Big Bad Con, and so I mean, there are so much, and it's like hard. I've been trying to process all of it, but there are a couple things that stood out to me, and both of them were jokes, because I think that we have like, I don't know, rumors of we've learned with people very very quickly, and so there was a joke that that Lauren made that was how do you light the flashlight, the nuclear flashlight, and it was you roll plus hot, which would not have gone over anywhere else, but went over here, and then there was another one in your favorite stat, yeah. And then there was another one in a game that Andy and I and a couple other people were playing at the end when we were playing for the Queen, which was something about like made a joke about the Frost Shepherds coming. And I was like, there is nowhere else I feel like in the world that you can make a Frost Shepherds joke and that everybody at the table would laugh and get it. And, there's many things that I think speak to the community, but just having those moments between people that like, these are the people that get what you like and get you and get the games that you enjoy. Those are just like the icing on the cake to the con, but they're indicative of the bigger community.
Yeah, and actually, building kind of on what you're saying, Spencer, and also kind of what Yoshi had hinted on, speaking, from a publisher, an indie RPG publisher perspective, the nice thing about being able to go to Big Bad Con is not just that it's inclusive in terms of its community, but it's also very inclusive in terms of the designers that come in, bringing in games at different levels of completion, different levels of publication. It's a very good environment when you're wanting to test out something new, which is one of the reasons why I go. But it's also something where you had people who had more experience there also available as a resource, also being very inclusive to the new designer to be able to say, what's your idea about where, how can I help you? How can I make your game better? And just let's play your game. And I think that, it works on both sides of the table, both in terms of the player and creator, that Big Bad Con really allows that kind of open environment that you don't normally see.
I'd love to add a little bit more, not necessarily to carry on from what Dave was saying, but like going back to your question of like how can it improve and like what things that are still standing for improvement is like for me, one of the reasons I think Big Bad Con is different is because it is improving. Like those name tags weren't there all the time. Those have shown up in different forms, and I really like the ribbon form that they showed up in this year, but they weren't always like that. And so like one of the things that really to me sets Big Bad Con apart is that they make such a big effort for it into making those changes when those changes get seen. But I mean, there's other things like I would love to have more people of color there. I mean, as much as there were some people there, we were still way outnumbered by a lot of other white people. So like it just happened that way. Like, and I just want to let people know that you can show up there. Like some of my best conversations were talking about ways to improve Big Bad Con at there. Like what were the things that we saw that we wanted to improve? And they have a super open like feedback form to like take all that stuff in, and they really take it to heart. And so I think that's one of the things that's super awesome there.
And like the few conversations that I had, like speaking to improvements, the conversations I had that were like about where Big Bad Con could improve came from like places of such love. Like it was like, I fucking love this con. I want to make sure that it stays this way, and like continues to improve and stuff. So I felt the love like on a community level for everyone wanting to pitch in and make it fantastic, which is super great.
And just jumping onto that is like one of the things that I found super useful is that people fuck up and make mistakes. Like I misgendered people, but like the the time or the atmosphere of Big Bad Con is very much promoting to me a lot of the time the right atmosphere of like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to use she, her. I know that you're they, them, and then just moving on. Like it was the I'm sorry, they, them, and then keep moving on with the conversation, not trying to make a big deal about it, but also accepting that people make mistakes and fuck up, but that they're also trying to do better constantly. Like I know I fucked up, but I also know that like I tried to, when I could, apologize and just move on. And I also know that I got called out on it and I called other people out on it, but we always just moved on. Like it was something that we could do and just move forward and always strive to be better.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed and because I mean, I've misgendered people and it happens and you apologize and you move on. But I think the biggest thing that you can do that I've seen is not make the person you misgendered bear the emotional weight. Like, don't make them say sorry to you because you feel bad now. Like, that's not what this exchange is about. Like, it's not about you right now. And so just like say sorry, use the appropriate pronouns and move on. And it's not like you're not putting it on that person. You just, oops. It's like if you called someone the wrong name, you wouldn't suddenly then make them explain to you their hardships.
One thing I found useful, I don't know if it helps others out there, but I found that at some point in the past, when someone will correct me, instead of saying sorry, I say thank you. And it kind of made me feel better about making the mistake and being corrected, because it's almost like they're giving you that gift of correcting you and you're like, oh, thanks for that, and then you just move on. So like that really helped me like not show the, oh, I feel so bad, like that thing. It's more like, no, thanks for that, and then you move on.
That's really, really cool. I haven't heard that before, but that's awesome. I wanted to say another thing, and it's not necessarily in the same track, but it sort of is. Just about something I think that they could improve on, and that I think we sort of hacked to improve upon, but that was really important to me, was that in the games on demand section where I spent a lot of my time, it would get really, really loud, and I had at least a handful of people at the tables that I ran that had hearing problems, not necessarily like full on disabilities, but just had a hard time hearing me or others. And so being able to raise your hand, and when you raise your hand, everybody else raises their hand, and then everybody stops talking, and then we just do a sound reset. We implemented that into the last session, I think on Saturday, that I did, the 8 to midnight one. I just went and talked to the GMs, and yeah, Tom's saying there weren't curtain barriers, which makes it even worse. But we also found that we couldn't see each other with the hands raised when the curtain barriers were there. So it was like this weird sort of place where we were trying to do our best to to make it work. They did something to improve it, but then I think there was also sort of this like other thing that needed to be in place as well, to help even further. And we did it, and it worked perfect. It worked exactly for what we needed. And I think if that was sort of like normalized and brought up at the beginning, during games on demand, that might help as well.
Yeah, totally. I love the hand raising thing as like a sound reset. That's such a great idea.
And it's so respectful too, which is what I like. It's just like, hey, it's not like, hey guys, can you shut up? Like it's not really brash. It's just a silent, like, and everybody understands. And yeah, I really like it. I stole it from Gen Con. They did it at Gen Con, and I stole it from there, and it was great. So anyway.
I found it very handy at 5 a.m. when Tomes was getting a bit loud in our hotel room, and I was a bit worried about getting kicked out. So, great. I love you, Tomes.
Well, we already got kicked out of the lobby, so yeah, that's fair.
Go
sorry. Appropriate. No, I think like one area that I was thinking a lot about improvement and wanting to like sort of come back and love this space. I think like one thing that I don't honestly know how to like improve it. I'm sorry, I don't have any solutions, but I think like while Big Bad Con is super good at like addressing macro challenges within the communities, like having a process for handling like difficult situations with people, and like making public processes for like introducing yourself and your pronouns and that kind of thing. I honestly struggled a bit with like more micro cultural like habits that come in from the outside world, right? Like I found myself as a woman getting talked over a lot by a lot of dudes throughout like the duration of the con, and luckily I had some like really lovely people there to like support me and help me find a voice in those games, which I was really appreciative for. But I think like, yeah, I don't know how to like begin tackling that. Yes, it is Yuka. You're amazing. And like Tomes and like other people I had the pleasure of playing within those games that were a bit like challenging. But yeah, I don't know where to begin with that, but I would like to see some steps to like addressing the silent like sort of normative cultural things that come in from the outside and affect like that con space. I don't know.
So something I did all weekend, and anytime I was in a conversation with a woman or a person of color, anytime I wanted to say something, I would try to ask myself, what is this redundant with the woman or the person of color just said? Like, am I about to repeat them in a different way and try to get the credit for what they just said? Because I think that is the shittiest thing I've ever seen, is when like one person says something, nobody responds, and then the white dude says it and everyone's like, that's the best, right? And so that's the one thing that I tried to keep at the forefront, is anytime in a conversation, like I just would try not to repeat what a woman or person of color at the table said. And that I know that served me pretty well as a starting point.
That's why you're the best. Yeah.
So one thing I'd like to bring up here is that a lot of and this has to go with the outside culture thing, is that there's a lot of in gaming culture of, yeah, let the GM do that and model that. I think this is a responsibility on everybody. It's not on the GM to do this. This is on every person at that table. So if you see another player, whether or not you're the GM, talking over somebody else, it's kind of on you to help step up and say, hey, wait, I was really wanted to hear what they were saying or what she was saying. I want to know what was going on. Can you just hold on a moment?
Yeah, which to call it an example of how Kurt is an amazing human being, did that like 4 or 5 times like in a game, which thank you for that.
Yeah, that's I can't Noel Lara, I can't say that name. That's in chat. But they're saying that they've been conversation and discussion facilitator a lot, and one of the things that they would be mindful of is who's talking a lot and who's not getting a chance to speak. And so that's just spotlight management, right? Like that's we can use our gaming tools for that. So that's, I mean, take all of the spotlight management tools that you've learned, and then Noella. Okay, cool. And take all those spotlight management tools and just try to pay attention to the conversation. And if you notice someone isn't getting enough spotlight, then throw that spotlight. Did you guys, any other like things we can improve on, or like pain points that you guys had in?
This is where I almost did that woman thing of like, I feel bad because I'm talking a lot. No, fuck, you can listen to me. Yeah. One thing that I just sort of like right now is like, I know there's a shit ton on those badges already, but like something like I am a hugger, I am not a hugger, because like I had to like creating space for people to say like I am not comfortable hugging you and taking that pressure off of them, because like I'm a huge hugger, and I always was like, hey, can I hug you? It's totally fine if not, but like needing to negotiate that space, and I don't know, I just I think that is just a random thing that might help navigate spaces for people who don't appreciate hugs. Not, I don't quite get that, but yeah, I appreciate there are people who are.
Like you mean something akin to the pronoun banner that like red means don't touch me, or
Yeah, or like Yoshi had a really good idea, which was what was it, like the
Yeah, so on my custom badge that I use all over the places, I just says hugger if desired. And so like that way I don't have to offer, but it lets other people know that like I will totally give you a hug if you want a hug, but like that way I will give you the space to ask for it because I've made it available that I am receptive to that.
And you give fantastic hugs, Yoshi. Just
If
want
you-
to say, experience it for the first time. Oh yeah, Tomes just said it too. Yes, they're fantastic. They're my favorite, and I love them. So thank you for being you.
So I just want to say I don't go on a lot of vacations without my wife, and so this was the first time in a long time that I was on a vacation without my wife for like 3 days, and it like occurred to me maybe Saturday night that I was like, I fucking need a hug. And Yoshi was standing there, and Tomer had been telling me how good Yoshi's hugs were and I just like walked over and I was like, can I get a hug? And it was like I felt so much better after getting a Yoshi hug. Like that reset me. So thank you, Yoshi. So some of the other things we have in here.
This is the best because you need to move it along, and you're the one tearing up, so you have to do it.
So
do
one
it,
of the
Kurt, you're the best.
Yay! It's me in the thing. All right. So one of the other things that I have down here is GM and player behaviors that added to your experience. Obviously, we've talked a lot about like how people were socially just there, but were there any specific player or GM behaviors? I know the hand raising one is a new one that I hadn't heard of. Was there anything else you noticed at your tables that's sort of either specific to Big Bad Con or at least prolific at Big Bad Con? Now let me just throw it to the silence.
I can speak to that just in games on demand because everybody was strangers. That a lot of times when I was playing with people that knew each other, they would automatically listen, like actually actively listen to each other. But I noticed that at Big Bad Con more so than other cons, people would actually actively listen when people were speaking and weren't on their phones, weren't like doing other things. It was a very they were very engaged and wanted to hear what other people had to say, and that was sadly pretty unique from the experience I had.
Yeah, I will say that active listening is, I mean, it is not an easy skill, and it's something that I've been working on a lot. And I am like, it's something that I struggle with. I definitely have a little attention issue, and so if I'm in like a games on demand situation and there is another table right there, and I'm trying to pay attention to what someone's saying, and someone else behind me makes a joke, like I lose the conversation. I can't hold it. And so it's something that I struggle with, but it is definitely something I noticed throughout this whole con. I got to play a couple of LARPs and things, and we'll cover that stuff in like when we talk about highlights. But everyone was there for everyone. The big thing for me was we had like new players drop into these LARPs that obviously didn't know what was happening, and the more experienced players would just take them under their wing and guide them through the experience, which was really impressive because I don't usually see that. Like you get it every once in a while, and certain like communities within a con will do that, but like as a whole, that is not a gamer thing.
It's an interesting thing because, I think over the years, I've definitely seen my evolution as a player, right? And I feel like I am a much better player than I was last year, and then much better than the year before that. And even back then, I remember thinking, "Oh, I think I'm a pretty good player because blank or blank." But like I look back on that young naive player, and I think that they've learned a lot of stuff, right? And specifically, I mean, one thing that I noticed is online play, which I haven't done a huge amount in the past, but I definitely have a ton more experience in the last year or two, mostly with the Gauntlet. I've noticed that, you know, we have a good play culture there, similar to Big Bad Con in general. However, one of the things that we do very well is we aggressively mute our microphones. And that means that when we're not on the spotlight, we have the mute button on, so background noise isn't coming in. It kind of forces you not to interrupt with the banter, which means that the game ends up being very focused around the play. So it's a lot less of the, oh, I'm with my friends, like joking around, which, there's a lot of people who stream who do that. And that's fine. There's a lot of people who like that because they feel like they're with their friends and they like the banter and the humor. But that's not the culture I'm currently playing in. The culture is, no, we're here to play this game and we're going to be listening to each other. And every once in a while, when it's our turn, we're going to jump in there and do our thing and everyone's going to listen to us, right? And I've gotten so used to that. And I know that Lauren and I had an experience with one game where, we needed that mute button. Like the other two players did not know what that culture looked like. It was, no, I'm going to keep interrupting. Oh, I'm not in the scene. I'm still going to ask questions, and this was one of those situations where they did a lot of the talking over when, Lauren was taking her time with some scenes. And I mean, like that's what I live for in this game, right? Is when she's going to start going off on a thing. And, it was really hard to deal with. And I do want to say again, Kurt, like that's very inspirational hearing like how you handled it. I tend to try to avoid confrontation. And so, like I have a hard time passing that boundary. But I think over this weekend, I've learned that no, I need to step up my game a little bit as far as, as a player, just like Yoshi was saying, I've got a responsibility as well. It's very possible the GM may not support me, which is fine. There's also an open door. So if I feel like this is not the game for me, I can always leave, right? And I think, I look back on that experience and I have regrets on what I could have done better. And I'm not saying that to apologize, like, oh, like I'm so sorry. No, it's like more like I've learned a thing. And I'm hoping that the next time that opportunity comes up, I can step up in the right way. So, we had a game that was an inferior experience because of it. And I'm bummed, like angry even. Like I have to admit, I look at some of those players and I'm angry at them because I could have had a fantastic game and I didn't. And I'm angry at myself because I could have made that game better. Right.
Aw. No, I think like from that game, I think I likewise took away like a lot of learning experiences. I think it was turned into a positive thing because I'm like, okay, cool. And next time when someone tells me to hurry up, I'm gonna be like, no, you can fucking sit down and listen to me, and I will take my goddamn time. So yeah, no. I was gonna say something else. Oh, sorry. This is why do I apologize all the time? I'm sorry. Oh God. To that, to what you said, Tomes. at like table culture and things like that. And like I what was unique about Big Bad Con? Fuck you. I love you. No. What I find really unique about Big Bad Con is like just the plethora of consent or safety tools that I found around the place, right? Like I've been to cons where I sat down at the table and the GM's just like, right, here are the playbooks, pick some and then we'll get started. I'm like, where's my X card? Like where are these other things? And like I think the Big Bad Con was like, at least in the games I played, typified by the last game I sat down to, where the GM was like, all right, here's an X card. You're all getting individual X cards. Here's lines and veils. I'm clipping the lines and veils to like the back of my board. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, here's the support flower. You use the support flower to show like what you want to see more of, what you're like less comfortable with, and like what you don't want to see. And I was like, oh my god, I'm so spoiled for choice and how to like navigate like consent in these games and that kind of thing. So it's nice that like just to see like that public display of like this is a safe space to play in.
One of the things that came up using the X card in one of my games, and one of the Malice games, and this was suggested by the player. It had been a different way of looking at the X card that I had not experienced before. And I was obviously familiar with the X card in terms of trying to make sure that people felt the safe space and that they didn't feel boundaries were being crossed. But the player had indicated that they wanted to utilize the X card to also keep people on track in terms of like, some of the kibitzing or some of the other things that, to kind of, we're going to go into the weeds about it. So it's like, no, let's get back onto the game at hand. Let's have active listening and focus. And that was something that I had never seen the X card used for before. Now, I know that some people may say that may not be the proper use of it. I don't know if I feel qualified to really, go into that type of evaluation, but I did find it nice to see that it was something where players were basically monitoring the other player group to stay on topic, as opposed to having to be the GM to be, the disciplinarian to say that no, you guys need to focus. It's also showing that the players are invested in trying to have a good game experience as well. And it also kind of, to be honest, it demystified the use of the X card. So it wasn't something along the lines of, I'm afraid to like use this because it may give an impression that I'm, worried about this subject matter or whatever. This is me just saying, let's move on. I don't want to like get hung up on this. So it was a different way of looking at the X card I had never seen before.
That's a super sorry. Oh, God, I'm not gonna apologize.
That
anyway.
was all on you. I didn't do nothing. I had stopped. I was quiet. Everyone goes, "Wow, Dave was quiet for a minute." No, and I was. And no, okay, that one was all yours.
I saw Yoshi on mute. But I just wanted to say that's a super good point and reminded me of a conversation I had with Alex McConaughey at like 3 a.m. So I'm probably gonna like get a lot of it wrong. But they pointed out like this really good thing I hadn't observed before, and I think it's not just specific to like Big Bad Con, but where gaming could improve in general, which is like identifying the difference between consent tools and like content tools. And because like I've seen the X card used for both like consent tools, like I don't want to see that in my game, or content tools for like I don't want to see space aliens and this like Regency romance and like X cutting, that kind of stuff. And they had a really good point, which is developing more of an awareness about where those two things, like the difference between those two things and how tools like navigate them differently. That was what I recall from that conversation because, as I said, it happened at like 3 or 4 a.m. But yeah, that I mean, what you said is like a really good point. Having the ability to manage content as well as like consent, and sometimes like tools like the SCAD do both wonderfully. Yeah, normalize the two.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily that people were talking about mushrooms or something like that, but the kind of situation. The reason why I say mushrooms is like because I was just imagining the Fellowship of the Ring where they just go off on this whole thing about mushrooms, and it's like, where are you going with this? It's not so much about the content that he was referencing, but more along the lines of saying, let's stay focused and not kind of go off on who can slip in the number or the amount of Monty Python quotes where it's not really the content, but it's the meta stuff where it's detracting from the game. And again, it was something that I had never seen before, and I'm still evaluating that as an overall. But it was an interesting use of the X card to, as Tomer said, to normalize the tool, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, I particularly really like the X card as content curation, and sort of staying on tone. Like, hey, you're getting this is a horror game, and you're telling a lot of jokes. I'm gonna just X this conversation. Let's move on, right? Like, let's get back to whatever it is we agreed upon in our social contract at the beginning of this game when we all sat down, decided on a tone. Like, I really like that, and it is a way to normalize the tool. I know that there's a lot of more sophisticated tools like script change, and you mentioned something with a flower, but like I've had trouble in the past introducing those tools to a new person, or especially a whole new group right away, and having them be understood right away. And so I think something simple like the X card of, do I want this in the game or not? X or no? Like, I think that's a great way to introduce those, and then you sort of like build on those as people become more comfortable with those kinds of tools.
I wanted to just for a second go back to something Tomes was saying, just to give him a compliment, because when we started doing games on the story games group that we do in Glendale, that we meet every other week, that was the first time really I'd ever seen somebody in a gaming group stop somebody else speaking to let, and it happened to be Hannah, my wife, who was speaking, not who got spoken over, but you stopped the person who was speaking and said, no, let her finish. It's something along those lines, and it was. You were saying that that you felt like you should have been more forthcoming with that, I guess, but I wanted to acknowledge that I witnessed you doing it, and it was really it empowered. I saw it empowered her, but it also just empowered me to also do that as a player. And so thank you for doing that, because I hadn't experienced that in a gaming group before, playing a lot of D&D and board games and that kind of stuff. And it was very inspiring. So more credit than you think.
I was gonna say, just to jump on the bandwagon of normalizing the X card, one of my favorite ways to normalize that is to like X out names. So like if you're like, oh, let's have this person and their name is Lexi. And I'm like, no, like let's just X out Lexi. Let's pick a different name, because that both is something very normal, like it's something very like low key thing, and a lot of people can understand like, I don't want to see that name or hear that name right now. Let's just move on. And so to me, I find that's a really easy way to help normalize the X card.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I love the idea that players are being a driving force just as much as GMs in normalizing those tools. And I think that a lot of times we focus a lot on the role of the GM and not as much on the role of the player. And it's something that's starting to change. And like, I mean, I saw the Gauntlet talking about it this week, about how they needed to have more player advice, because there's this sort of like fictional, the GM is better, just flat out better than the players. And I mean, when I was playing D&D and we were like killing goblins, maybe that was the case, but like in most of these games, like the GM is just as much an observer and a participant as any play. Like, everyone is creating at the same rate in most of these games that I'm playing now, and it's just not a thing. The hierarchy doesn't fit anymore, and so it's nice to see the players take on the role of content curation as well. Okay, but I want to move on. There's one last thing on our notes here that that sort of sets Big Bad Con apart. And Yoshi, I believe you put this in here, so I'd love to hear you speak to it first. But it was how they schedule games.
Yeah, so one of the things that I find really great about Big Bad Con is how they schedule and run games. And so the scheduling happens in three phases. So in phase one, everybody can sign up online. This is several weeks before the con even starts, and so you can get into your top priority games. And because everybody is only limited to 2 slots they can sign up for, it means that everybody who's signing up online is probably going to get into one of their favorite games that they really want to do. And then In phase 2, which is a week later, they sign up, they get another 2 slots to sign up, which means that in that second round, you might still get one of your favorite 2 games that you sign up for, because there's so many open slots, because not everybody can sign up all at once. And then finally in phase 3, there's open, you can sign up for every single slot you want to. And so like, I really appreciate that, because that means if I screwed up my own schedule and I couldn't be there when the slots opened at that time, I'm probably okay for at least a week, that like maybe I don't get into the absolute top pick, but there's going to be some fucking awesome games that I can pick with those slots that I have. And then the last bit of that is how they're run is pretty much every game is run in a private room. There are some games that are not, that are in a slightly less private room, but for the most part, every single game is run in a private room. And that is kind of awesome to have that space that is just yours for your table. And those things we were talking about, raising your hand for games on demand, while that's true for games on demand, that's not true for all the other games. You're there by yourself in your own room. Like, the only people who are noisy there is everybody else in your room, and that's something you got to deal. Yes, Dave, it's probably you. And so like, to me, that's something you don't necessarily see all the other places and other cons that I've been to.
Yeah, I like second that is so hard, because I have super bad FOMO always, and only being able to sign up for 2 games, made sure that I didn't overbook myself with games, because I couldn't, so I couldn't sign up for everything at the same time, and also help me manage my FOMO, because if like a game went, I was like, oh cool, like I had gotten to the game that a game I wanted to get into, that one's full, there's less options for me to stress out about, so that like whittling down of super awesome amazing games helped. I mean, they're all fucking amazing awesome games anyway, so like whatever, but like that made me feel a lot less stressed out as someone who has a lot of FOMO.
Yeah, totally. For those of us that like, I know Strategicon, which is my local con, or well, it's not really my local con. Both of these were equidistant, but it's the one that I go to more because I didn't know about Big Bad Con yet. And just point out, if Tomes ever tells you to do something, just do it. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, he knows that you should do it. So, because Tomes got me into the gauntlet, Tomes told me to go Big Bad Con. If Tomes gives you instruction, just take the instruction. I'm just gonna, for life.
I would be the voice of counter. I think the counter voice to that, because Storms,
Unless it is to go dance.
Storms, I love you. You made my weekend amazing, but I'm still so fucking dead after always saying yes to all of your suggestions. But I don't regret anything. I'm also very tired. Those are 2 things that are coexisting right now.
Yeah. So the thing I was gonna say is, the way Strategicon does it is they do half the game as pre-reg, and then the rest you have to sort of sign up at the con. So rather than you get your 2 games that you can get, you may not get into the game that you wanted, but you still have a second shot at it, right? Like, you can try to get into it at the con, at the books, and it means that every game is gonna have at least somebody in it. Like, you're at least going to have half partial reg for your game. So I do like that, but this was a little bit different. And honestly, I think it was a little more stressful, because it made me, I saw so many games go like just in a second that I, and I didn't have the slots for them. And so this way felt a little more stressful for me, actually.
I was going to say, there's one other thing that may not be obvious to everybody, is that in that first phase, it's also useful for the organizers to go, holy shit, we need more games of Blades in the Dark, or we need more games of Dialect. Who the fuck can we ask that can run these things? Because those things filled up and we have 0 left.
I think, yeah, that's a great point. I think one other thing is, if you are planning to come to this con, and these type of games are your wheelhouse and it's the stuff you play, another way to get the games that you want is run the games that you want, right? I mean, look at that guy. Yoshi ran a shit ton of stuff that he wanted to run. But like, I mean, you get to basically determine what you're going to be doing, right? And then the players are going to come, and these players are fantastic for the most part, right? Almost entirely. So you're going to have great games. And if you do a couple of those, if that's something that you're comfortable with, and then sign up for games, like that means you've already got kind of like a little cache of games that you're going to be happy about, right? And then everything else is just gravy. So
I wanted to add one more thing. Just voicing another compliment, I guess, but for the staff for Games on Demand, which was that they actually scheduled breaks in between sessions as opposed to other cons where they will run in 2 or 4 hour blocks and continually run in 2 and 4 hour blocks. They would have a session that runs until 6 and the next one would start at 8, which does mean you don't get as many games, but it also means that I, as the GM of who wants to run games for all the Games on Demand slots, doesn't die. Like I have time to go get some food and go to the bathroom, and like I have time to recover, even just like sit for a little bit and not run a game. That was a really, really great part of doing that. I really appreciated that.
I liked
anyway.
sitting. That was nice. I liked sitting, Spencer. That was nice.
One of my favorite ways to be sitting in and standing. Those are my favorite too.
It's a great activity.
Yoshi, sleep is one of the best LARPs.
Yeah.
Agreed. The eating LARP and the sleeping LARP were definitely two of my top LARPs.
Oh, eating LARP at the Japanese place was the best game of the con. Yeah.
We aren't going there. We aren't going to this.
I'm just saying, it's a great restaurant. They have solid. The staff was impeccable. I can't say enough about them. But
she was fantastic. Yes.
She was. I told her I loved her when I left. Like I don't know why. Like I was just like I love you, and then I just walked out the door.
I think we know why. Yeah,
don't have the second box.
I wasn't gonna go with there, Spence, but thank you for. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta skip that second box of sake, guys. It's just don't. All right. Well, on that note, we have another section here that I'd like to get into, and that is playtests and takeaways about game mechanics. I don't know if anybody's got anything that they specifically want to call out here, but I wanted to leave room for it because I know several. Like I know Dave, you ran some playtests. Specifically, I played in a few. Like I think all of us played in a playtest. We were the players, all of the players of a play. Oh no, Yoshi wasn't in it, but
the Thursday night game.
Yeah, the Thursday night game. So what are some either some playtests or some mechanics that you saw? How did things go? Anything innovative? Hit me.
Hell yeah. You want me to start?
Yeah, go.
All right. I'll do one. I'm going to do one and then I'm going to pass it off. I don't want to hog the mic or anything, but I will talk about Xenolanguage. That was my one of my first two, like from the first slot. That was one of the picks that I wanted. And Xenolanguage is a game from Hakan and Catherine Himes. They're the ones who designed Dialect. And it's about, if you've seen the movie Arrival or read the story, it's kind of like their RPG love letter for that, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what they wanted to do. Where, aliens have come down, they're trying to communicate with us. We don't understand their symbols. And so it's a little bit of like this language thing. But there's deeper stories going on as well. And so, I got to play with Hakan. I actually, when I signed up, it was Catherine supposed to run it, but Hakan ended up coming to the room, and it was solid. It's such a great game. There are elements of symbology. There is a communicating involves almost like a tool, which is kind of like a Ouija board. So you get like a little clear circle and all the players would put their finger on it and you would kind of like move it around, and that's how the alien would speak back to you. So although you would say what you wanted to say to it using these symbols, so you're still negotiating with these other humans, like what are we trying to say? And you've got like a very limited vocabulary. And you've got the pressure from whoever, the external force, like, hey, are they trying to kill us or what, like all that kind of stuff. And then you get this weird random alien gibberish and then you try to interpret it. And so all of that happened with all these other little story game pieces. So you get like the little cool scene framey stuff. You get a lot of the cool interpersonal stuff between characters. I mean, it's a game that if you gave me the tools right now, I would run it. I would just want to run it. It's fantastic. And I felt that way about Dialect as well. Like after I'd played it once, I wanted to run that game. And this is just another game like that. And it really hits the mark. Like the way they do it in the movie and the book, there's that like discovery, right? You're like reading and there's the hiccups and then do we understand? And then you're having those revelations occur. They created the mechanics so you would have revelations. And I just thought it was pretty brilliant. So yeah, that one mechanically, I thought just hit the mark. Really cool.
Anybody else have any playtest stuff or things they'd like to?
I guess I can say something. No, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tom's amazing game of 16 Candles. I haven't finished processing exactly why it was amazing. Only that personally, having come off of like a month prior of 5 games of Monster Hearts, it was really cool exploring high school drama and relationships and stuff in a way that was like more representative of like movie fun times and like quirky, fun, happy, sad stuff. It was less like tearing people down. And I'm sure like the way you took 10 Candle, the way Chris Gray.
Chris Gray.
Yes, thank you.
Christopher Gray.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris Gray inverted 10 Candles into 16 Candles, where you go from sort of like darkness to hope, I think like really facilitated that tone. Yeah, as I said, I haven't thought too much beyond that because I am still quite tired. But that was a really cool, neat playtest, and it really like rounded up a weekend in a very wholesome way.
I was gonna say I was in that game, but I was looking at my actual like play, like the games I signed up. I realized that 3 of the 5 games I signed up to actually play in were play tests. One of or games that were not released. One of them was that 16 Candles game. Another one was Catherine Rahman's Red Carnations on a Black Grave, which is a hack and reskin of Monster 1244. And then the last one I played was DC's Mutants in the Night, which is a Forged in the Dark hack, which was fantastic. And the thing I wanted to talk about was in DC is Mutants in the Night is that Blades in the Dark is kind of like a dark and gritty game. Like the vices in there are about just not doing great stuff and doing like kind of like shitty things. And that's not what DC's game is about. And I really, really appreciated how, like, instead of vices, like the things that they do is about de-stressing yourself, but they're for the most part all super positive things. Like the one I chose for my character was Vibin, which was all about just like going out and hanging out with people and chilling. It could be about finding like sex partners, but it could just be about hanging out and playing video games together with somebody. Like it was about like being with somebody. And sure, if you overindulge that is a problem, but like it is also just a good, happy way to de-stress. And like for me, that changed the tone of just a Forged in the Dark game so much. It was just an awesome like way to see that.
Anybody, Dave? Do you want to talk about your playtests you ran?
Well, yeah. I mean, I ran 2 playtests of. Oh, can I pitch? I'll pitch. So
Yeah.
so the 2 playtests were for the new game I'm working on, a town called Malice that's doing its Kickstarter next year around March. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I'd like to talk about is that the playtest that I participated in was Strauss's In the Dark, which we all played on Thursday. And Strauss had said that they had made the game to be a Blades in the Dark light type of game. And I had not played Blades in the Dark prior. So, and I was familiar with it, but it was still kind of a voodoo to me that I didn't know. And all of us here can, speak to the fact that we all got on very quick to the game. And I was still thinking about it the next day about just the overall system, because I liked how it had elements of PBTA games, which my other games have been written on, but it also had elements that made it very similar to a little Fate-esque in that they were GM negotiation about saying that we could, add a die because our character was vigilant or something to that effect. And that made it a much more interesting type of flexibility that I did not know had been in Blades in the Dark, and I particularly liked how Strauss put it together. So it made me think about some other ideas of way I could, hack Strauss's hack. How you do, and I really enjoyed that. Speaking, actually, I'll let everyone speak about Into the Dark for a bit, because I really think it was a really cool game and cool system.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Into the Dark too, because I really felt that, and Strash made it very clear that he wanted it to be taken this way, but that it was a system that could be used. Like, Into the Dark is a system that could be used to make a bunch of other games. And I loved how it took everything I really enjoyed about Blades and boiled it down to the parts that were the most impactful for me and did the most for me mechanically, and then got rid of all the fluff, in a sense. Like, sometimes you want that stuff. Sometimes it's there for, it is there for a reason in Blades. But I really felt like I could just take what Strash made and just hack it and make something else pretty easily. And that's really empowering as a player, to understand the mechanics so quickly that I felt like I could take it and run it, or take it and change it and run it the next day. Like, it was really, really cool. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, but I'll pass it off to other people as well.
I wanted to say Strauss described it as the world of Dungeons to Dungeon World, the world of Blades, right? The pared down simplistic version, and like that rang so true for me, because I instantly wanted to write the turbo breakers of this game. Like, I want the goofy, like, super gonzo, like, we're going into malls to fight trolls with laser weapon. I want that game, but in this system, because this game did something. I've struggled with Blades. I've run it several times, and I've played it quite a bit, and I can tell that there is a simplistic system underneath all of the setting, but it is so hard to separate it from its setting because of the way it's sort of built. But the die mechanic and the resistance mechanic are sort of the core things that I think are the most innovative. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that sort of forms the group and how the players interact with each other and the world, but the mechanic wise, the dice mechanic and the resistance mechanic are my favorite thing about the game, and I only need that to build the thing I want to make. And Strauss basically did that.
And I just wanted to also say Strauss just recently came out as one of the co-writers of Scum and Villainy, which is now available. So I just wanted to give that pitch right there real quick.
It was interesting because I've definitely leaned heavy toward those story games that, and I will use Lauren's words, allow us to indulge in our self-indulgent fantasy bullshit, right? So, like the ones that allow a lot of the, what does that look like? And here the mechanics are actually going to give you like the power as a player to, create stuff. Yes, Dave, swine. I love being in the mud. And so those are the games I've really gravitated to over the last, year or two. But now, and one of the things that I instantly rebelled against is this game felt almost like I was a kid playing D&D, right? Like, it was really that simple. It's not going to tell you what to do. It's not going to tell you, choose from these options and just start spouting bullshit and whatever. And instead, we brought that as a table. I think I forgot what it's like to play a game of basic D&D when you have like a whole bunch of fucking dope players and an amazing GM. And that echoed, like, his mechanic around that just created like a D&D game where if you've got a table that you enjoy playing with, you're going to have a fantastic time. The mechanics did not get in my way at all. And I was just able to kind of, I'm not used to it, but I kind of had to like, they did their thing, but then it was about me needing to interact with you guys, right? Separately from the mechanics, I felt like. And so even though the mechanics kind of reinforced some stuff, it was a very different play style than I've kind of gotten used to. And it was neat, so it took me about an hour to get into it, but then I got really into it, and I had a blast.
Were you the one who said that it had the feel of an old school game, but not the rules of an old school game?
I mean, I might have said that. If not, I believe it.
Yeah,
Like it just
because it was very social. Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
basically felt very comfortable through the whole game, and we didn't know what was going to come up to us, and that's okay. I mean, we were totally willing to just kind of roll with the punches, and and deal with things with arms for heads, and then it was good.
Lauren, go ahead.
I was about to be really mad at Toast for stealing my thing, but then you were really eloquent in a way that I am not capable of being right now. So thank you for indulging in my own self-indulgent bullshit. No, yeah, I mean, I just was sticking to what Tom said. I love a game that gives me dice for my own, fictional bullshit. So when Strash is like, cool, you got this like dice pool, you could have another die if anything else is relevant. And I'm like, well, let me tell you a story about me and my 8-eyed rat demon that kills people with nightmares. And Strash is like, awesome, you get a dice for that. Like, it feels good when we get rewarded for fictional bullshit.
Yeah. I really liked the adding a die for like fictional positioning versus the only having it be stress and shit like that. So that was pretty cool. Well, it sounds like we're kind of getting into highlights here. So unless somebody has any other playtests or anything they want to talk about, I'm gonna move on. Oh, you do? Go ahead, Yoshi.
Yeah, I just want to correct myself. Is that I said Catherine Ramon's Red Credentials on Black Grave is a hack of Monsieur 1244, but it's kind of a combination of that and the Witch to the Road to Linsfarn, and so like it's not just one of those; it's combining a bunch of those things, and it is fucking fantastic. If you get a chance to play it, you should play it. It is really good. It's about like the Paris Commune of like 1870-ish, like coming into power and getting absolutely crushed. Your characters will die. Like all of them will die. Like don't expect them to live because they won't. But you know that going in, and so like you have those expectations set. Like it's fucking fantastic. You should play it if you get the opportunity to.
Anything else before we move on into like game highlights?
I have a thing, but I think it's gonna flow in the next one because it's a highlight anyway. So I'll just wait till then.
Anybody else have anything, or do we want to just go into that and move into highlights? Or did you want to pitch Malice? Did you want to talk about Malice at all?
Well, only in the fact that it, as I said earlier, one of the things I really like about Big Bad Con is taking play tests, to the community and seeing how they go. I mean, and that was something that had been part of the woodshedding of Bedlam Hall, was that I really didn't feel comfortable about it until I took it to Big Bad Con 2 years ago. And that was really when I realized, okay, the game does have legs, because I wasn't sure. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to do, is to test out Malice, a town called Malice, at Big Bad Con, to see how people reacted to it, because I knew that it was a group of people that I didn't know immediately, but they were all going to take it very seriously, and that they were going to game. They were there at the table to game, and they were willing to not just kind of monkey wrench, but also really to try to see how the edges of the system could go. And I liked that a lot, and I felt it was a very good weekend for me in terms of that particular playtest design.
Very cool. Yeah. Go ahead.
So sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna echo what he was saying about the players all coming to play, which I mean sounds crazy because you're going to a gaming convention. Why the fuck wouldn't you be there to play? But like, I've had home games and one player just is having an off day, or because it's just scheduled months out and all this thing. And But you get to Big Bad Con, and every fucking person that sits at that table is there to work. Like, they are ready. They are in it. They are gonna they're gonna throw shit at, like, they're just gonna throw shit out there. They're gonna play off of you. They're gonna be an active listener. So they're gonna like everyone was so fucking generous at all of my tables that it was like that was my favorite thing. And so I could totally see bringing playtests here, because you just know that they're gonna give it the attention it deserves to find out if it works.
Sorry, I just think probably the best anecdote of that is that because Malice is intended to be a Nordic horror film or game, everybody has to name. And so, talking about how phones came out, but it was because everybody wanted to have an accurate Norwegian name. And I was looking, everybody was like stressed out to make sure that their name was Scandinavian enough. But like, you guys, it's okay. You don't have to. No, we really want to get it. And so, we had, Bors and, Olaf and all that. And so it was pretty funny, the fact that, everybody really wanted to get into the spirit of it, which was really cool.
And the only thing I wanted to add to what you were saying, Kurt, about players coming to play is, and this touches back to what makes Big Bad Con different, is there's also like an understanding that, like, if you're not there and you're not there, you can just walk out and you're like, hey, sorry, I'm too tired. Like, I don't have the energy for this. And it's not a big deal. That happened in 2 games that I was in, and not a big deal at all. There was no judgment. People are just like, hey, I can't do this. You guys have a great game. I'm just gonna go take a nap because that's what I need right now. So that, like, level of self-care that was there, as well as the no judgment about it, was just fantastic.
And even encouragement. Like, I witnessed several people get asked to play a game, which, okay, so I watched Tomer do this, so I'm gonna talk about Tomer for a second, and then it's Spencer. It's all you, Spencer, after I say this. So we walked into the room, and Tomer is trying to find players for Tachyon Squadron, and someone walks up, and he's like doing the thing, which I have done a million times, where you're like, hey, you want to do a fun thing? You want to do a fun thing? Like, he started that, which I'm like, oh, I know how this ends. Like, that person does the fun thing. Like, I've done that to people. And that person looked at him and said, oh, I'm just trying to process right now. And he goes, oh, great. I'm glad you're working on your self-care. Spun on his fucking heel and moved away. Like, just, there was no judgment. There was no like, oh, come on. Like, it was just done. And so, like, props to you. But it's not even, that was everywhere. Like, I saw everyone doing shit like that. So, yeah, back to that. But Spencer, say your thing.
Yeah, no. So both of the things that I ran at Games on Demand were playtests of stuff that I've been working on. And so it was really cool to sort of like put it in front of the audience that I feel like would be playing these games. And specifically, one of the highlights
Oh, no.
itself, it was people. Did I cut out?
Yeah, you cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I want to talk about one of the games during highlights because and it wasn't even the game that was the highlight; it was the people that were there. But the other one is Icarus, and it is thematically very similar to Downfall, in that it's about how a civilization collapses, and so I was interested to see how bringing it to a community that knows, or at least knows about, if doesn't actually know Downfall, would react to it, because most of the people that I play it with don't even know what Downfall is, and I wanted to just make sure that it felt different enough from that game to be able to have its own legs, and so it was really nice to play it, and they're like, oh yeah, but really enjoyed it and had fun. So so that was cool to sort of have that experience and be able to take a game that I've made to the people that I truly want to have playing it.
That's so cool. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna move us into, we're actually we're about 13 minutes after when I said we would end, so I do want to check and make sure that everyone is good to keep going, and let people know that if you need to bounce, like, you're totally safe you can open door policy. It's a reason I did it as a hangout.
bad clock right now, and I think it's telling me I've got, like, if I look at the time, I probably have about 6 hours left. So
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay. So, well, moving into game highlights, basically, people watching, I'm sorry, we are going to tell you about our characters because we had so many good fucking moments this weekend. Like, I came home. I have never left a con so emotionally drained than I did from this con. Like, sitting on a train, like trying not to cry in front of strangers, which is something that has like never happened to me. And it was just I someone else go first. Like, I don't know. Fucking nobody go. Okay, thank you.
No, I was just thinking it's really, you're right. It's really hard to like nail it down to some highlights because everything was fantastic. Like I think after the con, a bunch of us sat down and got pizza, and it took us like an hour and a half to like go around in a circle one at a time, just saying like our favorite moment was Bless. So I could honestly do this for an hour and a half, but I respect people's time. So I think the main highlight for me was like I love a sad, bleedy, feely game. That is no surprise to anyone. And I wasn't expecting to go in having satisfied that it's for like sad, bleedy, feely games. But I think over half of them satisfied that, and I think most of them were ones that I happened to fall into because like there was a gap or like someone dropped out of a game, like Inheritance and like the Starcross Lap. I think were two massive highlights for me for that reason. Because they were, I don't know, yeah, just really, really great, super sad, emotional games that I really love, and like I had some really great plays in them, kept being in both of them. um, and I came away with this like really positive feelings afterwards, which was super great. And uh, yeah, I think was also part of the reason why I cried a lot afterwards because I was like, everyone is so amazing, and I love everyone, and everyone is great. So yeah, I think that was one of my main highlights. I think.
I'll go. Sure. Why not? I'll start with one thing. Um, Alex Roberts is writing a game for the Queen. And it's a really interesting little game where it's got a very basic premise. There's a queen on a journey and it's dangerous, and you guys are all going with her. And then you just go around in a circle, and there's these cards, and they've got questions, and you just answer them, right, one after another. One of the most fantastic things about that game is the X card is built like all the safety tool is built directly into the game in such an obtrusive way that it just becomes used. I think this game is I think this game is basically it's safety card training, right? Like on the one hand, which I think is fantastic. But the reason I bring it up is because I got to run it in so many places in so many new ways that I never expected. And it all had to do with kind of like the crowds that I was in at the time, because we were in the lobby and it was loud, and it was early lobby evening hours, so there was just like chatter everywhere. And we're sitting there and joking around about maybe playing this game. There's a bunch of people in our crew, a little cloud of them. And Kurt, you said, wouldn't that be funny if for the Queen, it was a queen bee? And I was like, that would be hilarious. And so I got 12 people to like pay attention, and we started playing for the queen bee. And I've only played this game, and it's built to really deal with like the 3 to 5 range, like a small intimate table. And I've played a dozen times that way, and it's always fantastic. But this was a different experience. It was the party game version of For the Queen, and that happened there. The next night, there was a dance party downstairs. We had For the Dancing Queen, and we had 15 people up in the lobby playing that game. And then I went running on the 5K run. We played For the Running Queen and just made up questions, me and Sean, like back and forth on the fly. And it kind of kept everybody moving and like not thinking about the pain and the insanity of trying to run on Sunday morning. So there was just, and the other thing was I proposed a hack to the game based on feedback from Lauren and Ryan, who are two of my best fantastic like gaming partners here. And one, I brought it, but even before I even mentioned that I brought it, Ryan in the elevator was like, "So when are we playing your game?" And which was your little hack. And it was like, great, like they're bought in. And so we played this kind of hack of it, which added, like, instead of it all being centered around the queen, we were actually, building kind of like player-player relationships. And it was, now having played the game so many times, like that's not what I would want the game to be for everyone. But if you wanted to play the game in a slightly different way, longer form factor, intimate table, now you're playing a 3-hour RPG, not a 1.5 hour, like smaller, quicker thing. It did the trick. And that was my 100% favorite game of the entire convention. And all the games were fantastic, but I was like in heaven playing that game. So
I wanted to say that I was so inspired by your love of For the Queen that and we played it the night the very last it was the very last game that I played was For the Queen with Andy, the one I was talking about before, the one with Andy and a couple of other people, and so that night I literally laid in bed and was dictating to Siri questions for a cult hack for it. So like for the faith, and it's all about like all of us are in a cult together. And that came directly from you, like being like, "Oh, I love this game so much, I want to hack it." So I spent time. I have cards. We're gonna play it. Like I was so inspired that anyway, I just wanted to pass that along. That your love for it has bled over.
I think I played For the Queen more times than anything else this weekend because anytime there was like 5 seconds of downtime, Tomes was like, "For the Queen?" Like, but I got cards. And yeah, so like it was any downtime was For the Queen time. All downtime was the Queen's time.
It's just so good. It's so good. It's so simple and so excellent. The mechanics are anybody can pick it up and do it. You can, like you're saying, you play it in a huge crowd, and it just as well as like 3 people. And I don't know, it was fantastic, and I'm in love with it. So anyway,
that reminds me, like one of my favorite things about For the Queen is like you don't get to establish any setting premise, right? Like you just start the game. And it led to like one of my favorite con moments, which was like me, Ryan, Tomes sitting down at like fucking like 1:30 in the morning. Like we should have gone to bed. And Tomes opens with like, right, so we're all blobs here, right? And I was like, fuck yes, I'm here for this blob queen game. And it got to me and I'm like, I am not a blob, my dear friend, for I am a tree. And you just set the tone for like the most amazing, wacky gonzo, but we're like intimate, weird game about blobs and tree people, sexy tree people. Yeah, that was great.
So something else that I noticed this weekend, and this is gonna take us away from For the Queen. Does anybody else have anything on For the Queen before I move on? Okay. So I on Friday, so I capped my con with Tomes. I my first game Friday morning was a Tomes Merkur game, and then my last game with Tomes before I left to go get on the train was 16 Candles with Tomes. So I was like, okay, whatever happens during this con, I'm gonna be fine. I got Tomes at the front and Tomes at the back. It's gonna be okay. Yeah, Tomes sandwich. But I played Merkur, which any game that Tomes makes is gonna be a bullshit story game, right? And not like in a bad way, but it's gonna be story game bullshit because like every fucking sentence I said in that game was, I think, maybe, well, what if, like every sentence started that way, right? As if we're just brainstorming, we're all doing this together, total community collaborative storytelling. So that was amazing. And then I went and played Inheritance, which is it was the first time I've ever LARPed. So one, I have not done any LARP where I was in character the entire time. So fun. It was, yeah, that was. But coming from the like most story game bullshit game I had ever played to I am now, and I picked, if you're familiar with Inheritance, I picked, oh god, what's his name? Thorvaldale? Thorvald, the head of household. And so suddenly I'm supposed to kind of be in charge of everyone, and I'm in character the whole time. So there's no point when I can go, well, what do you think if he was like this? Like, there's no stopping. You're just in character the whole time. And so, like, I hit a point where I think we were at the funeral pyre, and so Gefia is leading the funeral, and she hands something to me, and the person playing my wife is staring at me, and I look at him, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, like, and so he leans in, and he's like, well, husband, perhaps if you, and like fed me a line real quick, and then after that I was kind of okay. But yeah, it was fictive fun in the chat is a hard pivot, or no, sorry, fictional mammal. It was a very hard pivot to go from like everything is brainstorming to everything is hard commit as soon as it comes out of your mouth. That was a big it was a drastic change, but ultimately, and I played hi Andy. I played I played Inheritance twice. I played it that first day, and it was so rewarding, that experience, that when I found out Lauren got into the second one, I was like, if a spot opens, you come and get me. And I was sitting at Yoshi's table, and Lauren came and got me and dragged me out of Yoshi's Dialect game, which I picked. So sorry, all you people at Games on Demand that wanted to play Good Society a second time, because I screwed you over, and then left. Oops. But yeah, so, and then that Inheritance game, I'm going to let other people talk because I've been talking too long, but the Inheritance was my highlight. Dave, you're muted, or we're not getting sound from you. Nope. Okay, we're gonna let Dave fix his issues, and we'll jump to somebody else. Go ahead, Spencer. Sorry, Lauren.
I have talked so much, Spencer. You can please say why everything's amazing.
I was just going to talk. Well, if we're talking about highlights, I was just going to talk about the amazing players I had in one of the Games on Demand sessions I ran, which was it was for Kids on Brooms, which is a hack of Kids on Bikes that I'm working on. And it's basically takes, if you guys don't know Kids on Bikes, it's about 80 kids in the 80s running around on bikes, sort of It and Stranger Things inspired. And I wanted to take that and set it in a magical school a la Harry Potter, because that's what I love and that's what I wanted to play in. And so I hacked it a little bit, and we took it there, and I had some players that were just, when we sat down at the table and we all were having a conversation, as you do before the game starts, just to make sure check in with everybody, make sure everybody's doing well. And everybody was this combination of like respectful, but charismatic. And so it was this cool balance of like, everybody knew when to speak, but also knew when to hold back. And you don't see it. It was really cool to have people like that, and also very creative at the same time. And so they came up with you asked questions like building the world at the beginning of the game, and they just came up with all of these really rich answers. I guess it was so nice to be in a space where people just clicked with each other so quickly, especially a group of randos at Games on Demand. But everybody was so invested, and they didn't shy away from the romance, which was something that was really cool that we sort of explored in 16 Candles as well, with Yoshi and Lauren and Kurt. Our characters all had romantic relationships, which you don't see as often in the community as much as I want it to be there, because that really is the base for our life. And so yeah, so I don't know, it was just really, really cool to have people not shy away from that, and to create intimate relationships between characters. So anyway, I'll shut up now, but I had a really, really cool game of Kids on Brooms, and it was magical, and like one of the best games I've ever played, period, and definitely my highlight of the con.
Speaking of like I like sort of like the more deep like emotional connections that like you have in games and stuff. I'm so happy that like your table of random strangers managed to achieve that, because like I know personally, I love those games, but then I'm really careful about who I have them with, because like I find it hard to open up to people sometimes. And one of my favorite moments at the con was when there was a spot opened up in the Starcross Lop, which meant I couldn't play in Night Forest by Ross Kalman, which I'm really gutted about. But my my highlight was I met it with Dave Rotfitter, Kurt in the basement area, and at the start they're like, "Okay, cool, we're about to split off into like our Starcross pairings for our game. Put your hand up if there's like someone you want to play with." And I was like, "Oh fuck, like would it be too much if I'm like, hey, I want to play with someone I'm familiar with? I should put my like big person pants on and say, no, I can play with anyone." But like I look over to my right and Kurt's already got his hand up looking at me, and I'm like, yes, thank you for making this like a good safe space to like have this game in. And like I really appreciated that because we had like the best story of like sad space cowboy and like young Kirk from Star Trek and their failed romance.
Poor
That
gay
was really
cowboys.
lovely. Yeah.
I wanna let Dave jump back in because let's see. Did you get your mic working, Dave? Oh no. Nope. Sorry. It's I'm not getting anything. Is it muted on the?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes like he has the same mic that I do. I wonder if it's like it's muted on the thing, but
Okay.
I don't know. All right.
All right. I think Dave is jumping off. Maybe if he pops back in, we'll check back in with him. If not, thank you for joining us, Dave. I want to talk about that. The Starcross thing. Yeah, when we were there, I am usually pretty uncomfortable with romance in RPGs. Like it's not something that I tend to like look for in a game or try to explore, but it's something that I've when I play games, like especially when we're telling stories like the 16 Candle story that we told, like romance is such an important part of those type of movies. Can you talk, Dave? Is it muted on the thing? Oh no. Dave's mic is dead. Okay, oh.
How about now?
Hey, we got him.
There we go.
All right, I'll come well let me finish my thought real fast. So the I don't usually do like romantic stuff in games and stuff like that, but because I don't like trust the other person usually. Like I know that I never know if it's gonna be like that was a little weird, like I don't really want like. And I knew that from playing with Lauren in the Gauntlet that if I needed to like X something or like it wasn't gonna be okay or like hey this is like going a weird place, let's just like rep it or something, like I knew that was gonna be okay, and you were the only person in the room that I kind of knew, so I was like yeah. Because I knew that if it got weird or anything like that, like we could just cut it off and it would just like shut it down and it'd be fine. And I wouldn't be like taking away from anybody else's experience. So yeah, that was my thought there. But Dave hit it. Oh,
very happy here. Let's go. No good. I just want to say, you're great. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I saw something very similar in the first a town called Malice play test that I did, where I had the full table. It was Saturday morning, and I don't even remember which character I was playing, but I had two people sitting beside one another who in the very beginning they decided that their relationship was going to be rocky. And just to be very high level on it, Malice, everybody at the table, person to your left, person to your right, you have a relationship. It may be good, it may be bad. So they had decided that the gentleman brought it, said to the person, I haven't seen you since, I haven't seen you for quite a while. And then she responded, not since Oslo. I've been thinking, and then he had said something like, I've been thinking of you since then. And then she said right out of nowhere, did your wife know about Oslo? And it changed immediately how quickly their narrative responded. And he paused for a second and went, okay, and then played it through. And it actually was a very interesting plot line that had developed through the game of how those two had been in a previous relationship. His wife had left him. It was revealed, and he had come back to the town to see if he could mend the relationship. And then, of course, vampires attack as they do. But it was very interesting. It was very core to the way the game works, is that, there are threats, but the relationship stuff is what really kind of propels certain aspects of, the complications of the game. So that was actually very rewarding to see that play out.
Cool. I guess it's me. So I touched on one of my highlights before, and that was like Mutants in the Night. I was super stoked with the community questions and the way that DC had set up those things. We built a fucking fantastic setting. It was awesome. And then on top of that, we just had some of the most creative characters on top of that from all of the players. It was just fantastic the whole time. And so I really liked my character, and I really liked all the other characters, and that game just was fucking fantastic. Specifically, so I'm going to gush about my character, and that character was basically this dark skinned, sort of probably half Japanese, half African person who was large, heavy set, and it was a mutants game, and their physical manifestation was all of these brightly colored feathers all over, just replacing their hair. So no hair on their body, just these brightly covered, almost cloak of feathers type thing. And their power was to cause memories to forget, but that also included their own. And so but whenever they forgot, whenever they use their powers, their feathers, one of their feathers would turn to lose all the color and just become white without any color. And that was the way that I knew that I had used my power, because I couldn't remember using it. And so I could just look down and see these feathers and go, fuck, I did it again. And things like that. And how I activated is because I had an ukulele, because we were setting in a physical, a Hawaii island type thing. I would play music, but I would never sing, because whenever I sung, that refrain is what would trigger the memory loss for everybody in the room, including myself. And the thing that would get left back and replaced was that refrain or that verse or that phrase that was sung. So then people would walk away, or they would not remember the thing, but they would suddenly have that verse stuck looping in their mind. And so it was just, I really liked that character. It was fantastic.
Are we doing a round two here?
Well, I was gonna say, can I ask a question about Mutants in the Night specifically? So I've read a little bit about it, but I haven't gone through the whole doc. But from what I have heard, it is very much about marginalized communities, and you have this power, but the social structures in place are it hurts you to use it. The social structures prevent you from using your power. And I know that a part of the focus on it is being a person of color in a community that and maybe powers as a metaphor for that. Was there something to losing the color in a feather, every time you lose a little bit of who you are too, right? I mean,
yes, I lost all the memories, but I don't the way those powers worked is whenever I use it to erase somebody else's memory, I lose the same amount of time. I cannot erase
Okay.
somebody else's memory without losing mine at the same time. But I don't think that's the question you were really asking. Were you trying to look for something different?
yeah, I like the metaphor of when you when you seize the power, when you use the power, it takes away who you are on a core level.
Yeah.
Like you actually present differently because of the the things that you've done to gain power.
Yeah, in general, that's not always the case. That just happens to be the thing that worked out really well for that character and that playbook in particular. But like in terms of like as your question about like mutants in the night and marginalized communities, yes, it is all about marginalized communities and the institutional systems that are set up to keep them out of power, to keep them in places where they cannot affect change, and that when they finally do get these like little mechanisms to do it, the adversity that they face to try to keep them in place. And a lot of like what the players are is how do you deal with that adversity to bolster your marginalized group into to being to getting respect, into getting just basic services, into like dealing with all of that systematized shit that is out there.
Yeah, that's something I'm really interested in about that game, and why I really want to get to play it. All right, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about?
I got one
Yeah,
more.
I can
No,
talk
go
all
ahead.
night.
Spencer. Do you want to go, Tomes? Go ahead.
I don't need to go right now, but I just wanted to make sure we weren't cutting this thing
No, we can keep
off
going.
too short.
I'm not
All right.
tired. Who's tired? Let's play for the queen.
Oh.
Yes, that would be fantastic, and I'm ready. By the way, do this.
Has everyone gotten
I've
a
run
run?
it online.
Have you? I want to make sure that everyone gets a turn before we go around again. Did everybody get a go? Okay, go ahead, Tomes.
All right, let me take that mic. Just quick shout out, Jason Cordova came out from the Gauntlet. He's like one of the head organizer, if you will. And one of my other first slots that I chose was Cthulhu Dark that he was running on Friday night. And Lauren was in that. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Unfortunately, there were some like player mismatchy stuff. That's cool. I mean, it happens. But just getting to watch Jason like GM and do his shit was fucking amazing, right? And the best part was like, I mean, I've played with him before, like 1 or 2 little sessions online. I know, Lauren, you've played with him like a bunch more. But man, yeah, like that guy just knows how to evoke, personalities and voices and all that kind of stuff in this kind of very creepy, mellow way. Like he's got this kind of wheelhouse of games that I know he loves to play and kind of run, and he's somewhat known for. And it was just great to be able to see that in the flesh. So that was pretty cool. But I do want to say one of my other like super highlights was, I think, one thing to keep in mind, and this is for you guys out there, this is a pro tip for Big Bad Con, is you got to bring the extra bits you want in the con. Like Lauren and I left from LA on a flight together to go to Big Bad Con. So of course we're in the lift or whatever on the way to the airport, and we're like, okay, let's figure out what our going to look like Starcross game. We have 2 people here, right? So we start talking, and I think she said something about, well, anyway, we got into Paranoia, 2 troubleshooters, on a mission, right, with friend computer looking above, and Lauren said something about like we were talking about like the lead and follow stuff, and you mentioned like something about 2 follows, and it was like, oh my God, of course, perfect. Like follows in that game do everything unintentionally, and kind of like, so there's that subversion kind of thing, which plays straight into Paranoia. And so, yeah, we just went through the airport, which was fantastic. You go through security, you go through all these procedures and bureaucracy as we're playing, like setting up to play this game. We get on the plane. I have my little mini Jenga tower. We set it up on the tray, and we just played through our scenario until the stewardess told us flight attendant told us 3 times to close that thing. I mean, the last time she was just staring at me until I did it. But I moved the Jenga tower and it still stood. So we were able to play the whole game out from the chair between us. But yeah, it was fantastic. It was true love. And then, destruction, but we have more sleeves. So we were resurrected. It's all good.
I want to stick in that as like a really good con highlight because I'm not gonna go into like the myriad of stories about how much like Tom's fucked me over at the airport, with love, but it definitely lent itself to like airport privilege and paranoia in our game. But I also wanted to second like Jason is a fucking amazing GM, especially when it comes to horror. Like I've played with the guy a lot online, so but getting to like experience his creepy dark horror shit like in person was amazing because he was like doing whispery voices and getting like real low and like drawing you in and stuff. And like I was like so nervous when he introduced the classic, like, and there's a girl down the hallway and she's got her back to you. And I was like, motherfucker, if there is like a tiny child outside of this hotel room in the hallway, I'm going to shit myself. So yeah, Jason Cordover is such an amazing horror GM. I love that guy.
I want to call something out that I thought was really interesting about Starcrossed, because another game that I've purchased and not played until this weekend. But the way the mechanics work for the lead and the follow, and the way it's spelled out, how basically teaching nerds to flirt, because there's like so many instructions in there. And what happened is the next day we're playing 16 Candles, and I was like, oh, well, these characters are supposed to be flirting. I'm going to unintentionally touch this person. Like, I was just using the vernacular that I picked up from that. And I was like, oh, this character would be the lead in this situation. I'm not going to hit on them. There were things like that where it was like, oh, well, I adjusted the way the character would work based on the rules of Starcrossed. I really think that Starcrossed lays out a solid model for romance in RPGs, because it is spelled out. The actions sort of make sense and fit with the way a romantic narrative would go, and it's super consent positive. And so like anytime there's a romance in an RPG from now on, like I'm gonna be in the back of my mind, I'm gonna be balanced, like, okay, which playbook am I? Am I a lead or a follow? Do I intentionally touch this person? Like, do I reveal something about myself now? Like, I'm gonna be using that in the game to manage those like how those relationships should work.
If I could jump in again, it's because I love that game and I played that game a lot, and our game was amazing. No, I love the consent mechanic in that, because it is so iterative. Like, you have to break everything down into these Jenga pools, and like you can't narrate a lot about how I touch you and blah blah blah, because you have to be like, I brush my hand against your shoulder. Now I have to pull from this fucking terrifying Jenga tower, and I hope to God that it doesn't fall. And then it's the other person's turn. And if they're like the lead, they can be like, well, I intentionally touch you back, and then I have to make a pull. So yeah, I love how it breaks down into like those microtransactions between like physical intimacy and a really like clever way. It's so good.
The other thing that I noticed is, because nobody jumped in, so I'm gonna keep talking about it. The other thing I noticed is the like touching that happens is generally extremely innocent. It's like, oh, I reach for a cup and accidentally bump your hand. Like, it's so like it's so much the like beginning stages stuff of like bump, or, oh, well, let me hand you something and then we fumble, or like stuff like that. Like, all of the touching starts out crazy, like it's super innocent, but then because of the Jenga tower, like the tension is there. So like it builds that tension into the narration, and it like, I don't know, that it does a really good job of telling its story.
Yeah, like you innocently accidentally like, break the water faucet in like the bathroom, and then everyone gets wet and has to like take their shirts off. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then the lights go out because you're playing in a collaborative game with 20 other people, and the shit that's happening at other tables is affecting your table.
That was like, honest to God, my favorite part of that, because like the number of games that were affected by like the lights going out, it was so good to see that ripple effect across like this like ecosystem of romance like across this whole room. Was super amazing.
I loved that our Zero-G Space Rodeo turned into a shirtless Zero-G Space Rodeo because the temperature went up in the whole space station just out of nowhere.
It was so good.
I was basically playing Skyboy Joe.
I think, yeah, my regret was that our tower fell over before we could let the space worm free on the spaceship.
I'm glad to know Skyboy Joe is becoming part of your normal personality.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on another thing that was really interesting in one of the playtests that I did that I found really cool because I hadn't experienced it a lot before in RPGs, and I found it sort of fascinating to explore, especially with that audience, which was one of the pieces of Kids on Brooms is that you play a sport that is blank and blank on brooms. And so you come up with like what the two sports that you combine are, but set on a broom. And to have, and then basically every like one shot I tends to start with, or I've tended to start it with a game of that thing, whatever they've invented. And so to play sports in an RPG was a new experience, and I was like trying to figure it out, and it was just really fun to see how the mechanics that you would use for everything else also play into sports. Like people were using charisma to try and like, do things with the other players, or like they're using brains to try and, come up like the coach. So we have a professor, an eccentric professor in the game, and they're the coach of the game. And so they were coming up with plans in the game, and we'd roll. Oh no, he disappeared. We'd roll to see whether that plan was well thought out. And so it was like this interesting thing that I've never done where you're using the game as sort of a metaphor for the bigger thing that's happening. But yeah, it was cool. I hadn't done it before, and that was a real highlight for me to explore that.
I don't think we've heard from Dave or Yoshi a second time.
I'll let Yoshi go.
Sure. So the other game or the highlight that I want to talk about is probably the Paris is Burning, the Red Carnations on a Black Grave. I really appreciated Ajit George, who was playing one of the other players. There's only two people of color in that game. Like there's 12 set characters. And so you play them, and there's really only two that really have any who are definitely people of color. Although maybe some of the other ones could possibly be. But I really appreciated him taking them and just owning the fuck out of them and like really playing them to the hilt, and it was fucking fantastic and a wonder to see. And it was just a really great thing to see. So that was definitely a highlight for me.
Dave, did you have anything?
What would you want to hear about? Space 1989 or When It Creeped People Out at Bedlam Hall? It's your show, so.
What was more of a highlight for you?
Well, we played Space. I was really glad I got to do Space 1989, which was where the Skyboy Joe character came from, or that we were referencing earlier, which is there was presets, and we were playing it Saturday night in the bar, which I'm sure we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we were anyway. And I was thinking about, Spencer talking about how sports broke out because I had one player doing the whole conceit is that it's like Ready Player One, where it's like in the future space travel, but they kind of have this 80s retro thing going on. And so this player was doing a live action video game with one of the NPCs, which was a cross between Joust and Frogger. So in the bar, the player and I basically stood up our arms like that, and we're bouncing at one another to basically enact how the two were bouncing, jousting. And then later in that game, for whatever reason, it just came up that, every time they were talking to the SS Kokomo, yes, the pleasure ship, it became a dance party, just part of the communication, even though the characters were threatening one another, going, hey, I'm going to launch that pulver cannon now. Oh, well, that's too bad. All right, now, hey, we're going to fire it. Hey, can we have 5 seconds? Sure, you got it, buddy. All right. Hey, talk to you soon when we blow you up. Okay. And Space 1989 was exactly what you would expect Space 1989 to be. So,
It's very much my kind of game.
Yeah, there's that one game that always is like, that's the Dave one where he's just kind of getting his energy out. It's like the Tom Sawyer Island of games, where we just let Dave go into that one and let him run around in a circle for an hour to tucker himself out, and then we'll go through the rest of the theme park. So that was that one.
Okay, so I think we've gone through one more time. So
I wanted to jump in and just say on top of, for what Yushi he was talking about Ajit, who I hadn't met before, but he was in the LARP that I did. It was the first LARP I ever did, and he was so giving and kind and wonderful, and I'm so glad I met him. So I just wanted to say, Ajit, I don't know if you're listening, but anybody who else knows him, you all know that he's wonderful. So I want to give that shout out.
Yeah, thank you. There were some really amazing players. I played in a mouse guard game, which was my Saturday morning games on demand game, and I had never played mouse guard, never played Burning Wheel. I didn't really know how it worked. I honestly think it was the most like, it was the most trad game I played all weekend, and it was still mouse guard. But one of the players. I think her name was Amy. And Gene, if you're in the chat, let me know who the GM's name. Kevin something. She was friggin' on it. She played Aelith or whatever it was. I don't know if there's like set characters in Mouse Guard or if this was just the guy's pre-gens, but it was like the aggressive mouse, and I'm playing the leader mouse. And so anytime we would get like, there was Nick Hopkins of New Mexico ran Mouse Guard for us. So anytime there was like any chance for that mouse to like take an aggressive action, she would just fly off the handle and start berating the other NPCs. But you know how when you fly into a tirade in character and you stammer a bit because you're still trying to find what you were going to say? She never fucking stammered, and it was always solid, and it was always really friggin' fierce. And so she crushed it like the whole time. I'm sitting there playing the leader, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think I have to fight anything. I just have to tell this mouse it's okay to kill shit. Like that was, and so, but at one point I was like, my only job is to tell the mouse whether or not it's okay to fly off the handle. Like that was my only job in that game. And so that was really good, because I don't typically like playing leaders, but I always, if you don't know who the characters are, I always end up actually accidentally grabbing them. So I try to find like, what is the thing, like what are my resources and what can I do with them? And in that game, my resource was this vicious fucking mouse. She was so terrifying anytime she started screaming at everybody. It was so good. Anybody else wanna start round 3?
Fuck yeah, I'm ready for round 3. I mean, we're only on round 3. This is like peanuts. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick shout out for so Eric Vulgaris. Me and him have been chatting since Go Play because we didn't get a chance to play there, and we're like, you know what, we gotta make a game. And so on Sunday afternoon, like I made a slot so we could just play something. And we were talking about doing like Swords Without Masters, and then he was joking about his Staplers Without Masters hack, and stuff. But Morgan Ellis had been running Tachyon Squadron all weekend long, and so he volunteered to run that for us. And it was originally like I was having a hard time finding the players. I think Kurt, you mentioned kind of that thing. It was just the two of us, but then all of a sudden we got Andy Munich, who is one of my loves, and a couple, Michael, who has been volunteering with them all weekend, and Jenny, who's a new friend, who like I didn't think I would ever find someone who had like the weird, quirky, constant sense of humor that Andy Munich does, but like she, I don't know, she just like knew that zone, and those two decided to play like twins, like one character sheet, between the two of them, and it was just riot just watching those two be comedians. It totally was like not it was messing with the tone. It's a space opera, so it kind of was okay, but like to be gonzo silly. But we weren't really able to like have any kind of like serious gaming, but that was okay because I just was having like a blast watching them. Also, all three of those had to leave after 2 hours. So we kind of talked about it from the beginning that, oh, we'll kill them off halfway through the game or whatever. And after 2 hours, they did take off. And then the tone totally shifted. And it was just me and Eric and Morgan, playing this game. Even then, so there's two things. One, I was really proud of myself of being able to stand up and go, hey, can we change something? Because I'm not so into blank, right? And in this case, the game was like very hardcore mechanics. I don't really care that much about the mechanics. Like I like to understand them and get to know them, but I want my, what is it, Lauren? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know better than I do, man. Self-indulgent, like high fantasy self-indulgent bullshit.
Yes, only this was sci-fi self-indulgent bullshit. And man, that just shifted it for me because Morgan's like, yeah, sure. Like I was like, can we ask more establishing questions? Like, what does that look like and whatever. I didn't care about how the dice rolled and just move on. I wanted to see the scene. I wanted to, see that stuff. And Eric and I both just got to play some really cool role-playing stuff based on that. And Morgan ran a fun game, and there's a lot of discussions in another community that we are sometimes a part of where they've been talking about space combat and how do you make that interesting. And holy shit, Tachyon Squadron does that. It does some really cool stuff with that. So you can play all the narrative stuff, and then you can still do all this weird like spacey bullshit, which is kind of cool. So Happy Jacks, if you're listening, check that out.
Lauren, Yoshi, you want to?
So I just got a quick one because I got reminded of it before, and I'm going to call it out on audio. Is I loved in one of the For the Queens, the Queen Bee, is when the Queen got attacked, Dave's character just did a dance. Everybody else picked a side, and Dave's character is just like, I'm going to dance. Yep, just like that. And I fucking lost it when that happened, and it was fantastic.
I love that everyone's dancing in the tiny little windows down there. It's so good. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Oh no, I god damn it, I have so many. If I could sneak in two quick ones because they're super quick. I just wanted to like, I don't know why I can't get this out of my brain, but like give a shout out to Jean, like for Jean A, because I hadn't met him before in my life, and like he sees this very quiet, like straight faced dude, right? And then every now and then he just pops out with these amazing like one liners, and I just seems such a delightful person to like play really deep games with, like playing 16 Candles. And he's like, my mother is an alcoholic and I'm struggling with school because I have to support her. And I was like, oh my god, like I don't think I'd be comfortable exploring those themes, and I think that I like to explore a lot of like really sad deep shit in my games. But then like in the same game he like made a crack about rolling plus hop, and I was like, how do I turn on this candle? Like that guy is amazing. And then I guess I wanted to give another random shout out to Trey just for sitting in on the Gelatinous Blob Queen game, because he came in like partway through and like Tom was established like he's a blob. I'm sorry, I don't know what Ryan was. I could never quite figure out what Ryan was in that game.
He became a wasp.
He became a wasp. That's right. Ryan's wasp was amazing, and then I was
good callback.
And then like Trey joins this game, and I was like, how the fuck are we going to explain what is happening in this game? And we give them the rundown, and we go to him and like, what is your character? And he's like, I have skis for feet and like tiny wings that I can't use. And I was like, yes, this is gonna be an amazing game. And I just, yeah, like having him come in and then add to that hilarity was like, I needed that at 3 a.m. That was another massive highlight for me.
And before we leave that game, I just want to say that Ryan was giving me the most shit. Like those two, Ryan and Lauren, just became like opposed to me, and it was like a 2 versus 1. And I was doing a good job explaining myself, but they weren't having it. And so Trey was like walking by, and I'm like, hey, we can have another player. And Ryan's like, you're just trying to change the balance, the power dynamic. And I was like, no, just friendly person to add to the game. And then in like one round, it was 3 against 1. Like I couldn't. Anyways.
That was a real high stakes for the Queen game. Like I remember saying, Tomes, you were just trying to fucking win this game. And I was like, you can't win this game. But still, it felt very high stakes.
I feel like I have to talk about Inheritance more because I played 2 fucking Inheritance games and I only talked about one of them so far. I talked about the one where I was like stumbling over myself, but all of the characters in Inheritance are predetermined. They are all exactly the same. Or I mean, they're not all exactly the same. There's 9 specific characters that are the same every time you play the game. They have little books that sort of give you their history. They give you their beliefs, their instincts, and their skills, and all this stuff. But the randomizer is the people playing the game, because the way that you interpret and the way you portray those characters is not set in stone. It is not so prescriptive that you can't like put your own spin on it. And so playing 2 games back to back, like Friday at 2 and then Saturday at 2, they were wildly different games because of the way the players played their characters and who they chose to like try to ally with or throw suspicion on. And like the first game I played, nobody died. Like nobody died. We read the will. Everybody, like the people got what they wanted. The only person who didn't get what they wanted was me. And and probably like I don't know, all the Christians in it. So the Inheritance is a game about 9 Vikings. It's fine. Anyways, so the second game was a fucking bloodbath. Like almost everybody died. It was so crazy. And Sean, our facilitator is in the chat. Thank you for running it. It was really good. But something that changed between game 1 and game 2 is in game 1 during the night interludes, we just were all in the room and we would just sort of like group up, have a conversation. If you noticed someone was having a conversation you didn't want them to have, you would go bug them. But in the second game with Sean, I hope it's Sean, right? I think it's Sean. Yeah, cool. In the second game, we did all of the vignettes, all of the like nighttime interludes in front of a screen, like a damn like improv play. And so everyone got to sit there and watch all these amazing scenes that were happening. And like that was the most fun for me, was just sitting there and watching all these great scenes and like getting to point at people and be like, we need a scene, huh? Like you and me? Yeah, we need a scene. And like we would go up and have a scene, and or like it was such a different game. And I think because I had done it the day before, I had a little bit better idea of what was expected of me. And so I was able to like sort of throw my weight around a little bit better and sort of understand how the game could flow. Not like metagame choices based, but just understanding how I was supposed to act in that game. Hey, look, Spencer's back. Welcome back, Spencer.
Sorry, my connection was real bad, so I reset it and then closed a bunch of things. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. Happy to be here.
Well, that was that. If you ever get a chance to play Inheritance, play Inheritance. If you have played Inheritance and you're like, why would I play it again? You're wrong. Play it again. That's my takeaway from that game.
Who's going next about how amazing Big Bad Con was?
Yeah, Kurt, you got to control us. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk all night long.
Okay.
I mean,
well, Spencer and Dave haven't gotten to say anything in a while. Do you guys got anything else you want to talk about?
I'll let Spencer go.
I did on Heroes, like I was talking about, which is the first LARP I ever did, and it was the I had a similar experience to you, Kurt, in that it was a really unique take on, or it was really unique to like not have the option to talk to somebody about something, where I was just sort of thrown into the fire and had to make it up. And that was, it was empowering in a way because what I said in the moment became truth. But it was also really scary because if I said like whatever comes out of your mouth, that is truth. So it's both empowering and scary. And I had the support of some really, really great players including one who had a really antagonistic relationship with me. And so we were playing out this very antagonistic relationship through the whole game. And then afterwards, I didn't get the chance to talk to him before we all sort of scattered because I was running to a games on demand thing. And it was interesting because we ran into each other later and we had a good conversation out of character. And so we had this unique bond over having yelled at each other over the past like hour during a game, but actually really both respecting each other as players. And I hadn't really had that before because usually in the RPGs I've played, even if two characters have an antagonistic relationship, you have an understand or you're talking out of character enough that you know that they're not actually mad at you. And I never thought he was, but I'd never been immersed so hard that we had to have a debrief afterwards and be like, oh yeah, we both really actually like each other. So that was really cool. And it was unique to Big Bad Con for me.
Dave, you got any other highlight moments?
Well, so during Bedlam Hall, there was a moment. One of the players had a secret that was the fact that they used to be the Yorkshire Ripper, but they're much better now. And at one point, the character, the player, was deciding to arm herself by getting a knife from the kitchen. And so it started off about a 5 to 10 minute dialogue between her and me as her dark passenger. And she didn't really know that it was going to start, but it became just this long discussion between her and I about how the knife felt good in her hand, and she needs to keep control, and it just kind of just built on one another. And everybody got very quiet at the time because they had not, Bedlam Hall or most of my games tend to fly a little bit by the seat of their pants. And I had one player, Toby, who usually plays in some of the games strategic on. He approached me later saying, "Dave, that was the scariest shit I've ever seen you do, because I've never knew that this kind of aspect of your personality or your role playing was available. I always thought it was just kind of fun, and now I realize that was probably the scariest I've ever seen you." And I felt really good about that, but also a little worried. So, because I didn't realize I had gone there, but it was nice to know that I could still pull tricks out of the old bag. How about that?
Well, that is good to hear.
And I watched you sleep, Kurt. How about that?
Not enough. I did not sleep enough. Fucking tomes. So I
shared a room with Kurt to explain why that was part of it.
I think we're getting long in the night because I'm starting to curse out tomes. Does anybody have any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
You mean closing thoughts like round 3? Is that what you're saying? Did I get that right?
Fucking tomes.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, you know what? If we're doing round 3, then I think Lauren wants to talk. So Lauren, go.
Oh, thanks. No, you've been doing so much talk about inheritance, and I was like, shit, I haven't talked about inheritance, and that was like one of my massive highlights. And I'm gonna try to keep it brief, but I have a lot of thoughts about it. But I went into that game and I picked up the character Ran, who's like 22, and a lot of her drives are like, do everything for romance and but be dignified about it. And I was like, fuck, I know what kind of game I'm in for. I'm in for that game where no one listens to me, and I'm all very romance and feelings, which I'm always there for. And I think I feel like the whole game really came down to this point where my character was trying to articulate their feelings and what they wanted for their romantic storylines and where they stood and how they weren't going to marry that motherfucking guy who didn't care about her because he just wanted her for her money. And there were a couple of times where I opened my mouth to say something and then another character jumped in, and Kurt, being the lovely dude that he is, was like, let this woman talk. I know, seriously, let this woman talk. And it was really great when there was that pregnant pause and I was like, okay. And I was like, looked my fictional mother in the eye and I was like, mother, I find myself at a loss for words, not because I do not possess them, but for I do not have the floor to say them. And then like watched her face light up, and then went on this feel about like these patriarchs of our families have spoken over us for far too long, and like you and I need to like stand up against them, kind of thing. And that was just a very like empowering moment to kind of in character say like screw all you guys. And I again like it quietly you opened the floor for that, and it was like a very empowering moment in a game for me that I've ever had in my life. So that was again thank you.
You're welcome. I actually I made a choice as Arvindil when you I was meant to be in a romance with Lauren, and I or with Ron, and I was like, what can this like marauding Viking give to this like woman who's betrothed to a different family, like she's entrenched in this society? And I was like, oh well, like she has money, like she's gonna get money. If that's what she wanted, she would just marry the wimpy dude and like run all over him. She wants a voice, because no one would fucking let her talk like the whole time. Like anytime she would say anything, one of the heads of household dudes would interrupt her. And I was like, oh well, I'm the biggest meanest motherfucker here, like I'll just tell everyone to listen to her and then done, like I got it. And so that was like my goal the whole time. It was just like, well, what do you want? I'll give it to you. Just tell me what you want, I'll just go get it.
That meant so much to me on a personal level. That meant so much to me, and it was like very valued and appreciated. So like thank you.
You're welcome. It was a great game. I think my favorite moment from the con overall was from that game. It was when several of the characters are lying dead on the ground, and my friend that I like came here with is bleeding out, and I'm holding my axe, and you're behind me, and they're dying on the floor, and I'm like, I have to go check on my friend, and I turn to walk towards him, and you were like, but do you have to? And I just like pantomime throwing the axe on the ground, and then we just left. We were just like done.
Yeah, it was
So
the
good.
reaction everyone gave to that was like very satisfying. It was like, well, like yeah, it was same.
That was so good. All right, Tomer.
Okay, fine. I mean, if you called on me, if you really want to hear more, then I'll give you a little bit more. By the way, that story made me so happy. So anyways, Philip Wessels has been going to Big Bad for a couple of years now. He's also in the Gauntlet. And one of the games that he wrote when he was at Big Bad Con and he didn't know a lot of people, and he just kind of like decided to find a corner and kind of like put some stuff together, is a game called Pack of Strays. And in Pack of Strays, you are, a group of werewolves, and there's an alpha werewolf that you're kind of following along. And, it's a little bit about, marginalized groups and kind of like being kicked out of kind of where you're from. Like you kind of like leave your home and then you try to find a new home on the road. And he wrote this game. It's been a big part of the Gauntlet community itself, and codex and those kind of things. That's where it was originally published. But recently, he wrote a new version of it called Pack of Strays: Wolf Run, and that game was on the calendar, and I didn't set my alarm correctly for the second slot sign up, and I missed it. And I'm so glad I did, because, and Lauren did as well, because what ended up happening is we were just commiserating about how so many of the games had been filled up, and we weren't really sure what to do. So what we ended up doing is just like making our own games. And one of the things we did is reached out to Philip, and we were like, hey, do you have any, I asked him if he had any downtime to run the thing. And I wasn't really sure, like I was like, oh, maybe he's busy, maybe, da-da-da. He's like, oh yeah, sure, right? And like we figured out a slot. And me and Lauren and Ryan got to play this game with Philip, and it was so good. I was really impressed by it. There's a little bit of like, kind of like Fall of Magic style, like moving around a map and story prompts, but like also there's so much innovative mechanics in there. I was really surprised at like how many cool little kind of token things were going on. And it's not complicated, but they were just like thematically, like when we were talking very early in the podcast, many hours ago, about games with interesting and kind of like mechanics. I think this one kind of reinforces like the running away and hunters chasing you, but also like the the way, things would start escalating and losing strings and all sorts of stuff was just really, really cool. So, I mean, it's definitely a game that I want to bring to the table personally. But I just wanted to give a shout out to, Philip, because that's a dope game, and people should check it out. It is in one of the codexes. I don't know if Codex Midnight. I don't know.
Asphalt.
Codex Asphalt, of course, because road. So Codex Asphalt. Check it out.
All right. Anybody else have any? They want to come forward? All right, we're wrapping up.
I got one more thing, but it's
Okay.
not really an in-game thing. Is that one of the nicest things about Big Bad Con was got to meet some absolutely nice people. Obviously, the overall community, of course, is very awesome, but I got to meet some folks who I hadn't had a chance to meet before, and particularly I got to meet Vince and Maggie Baker and Alex Roberts and obviously the first time I got to meet Jason Cordova. But I wanted to stress that I think that Maggie Baker is just so nice. I think she's going to form an army. And I think that army is going to take over things, and I'm comfortable with that. I have no problem joining the Maggie Baker army because she was probably the most open and receptive person I had met the entire con. Treated everybody just like long lost family. And so, yeah, the Baker House Band is a pretty big. It's now kind of an orchestra, I think, where there's probably about 200-300 people in there, and we're all comfortable with being that because she just was absolutely charming. And I just wanted to say that was another one of the highlights was getting to meet Maggie, getting to meet Alex, who made me blush, just because I got her coffee, don't. And she said, "You are an angel." And I'm like, "No, evil, bad. I'm evil." No, but yeah, so very wonderful people overall. And it was a great experience. That's mine.
I also got to meet some amazing people this weekend, and so many people that I didn't get to meet that I would see them across the room. I'm like, oh, that's this person I know from Twitter. I want to talk to them, but they are like eating a sandwich, and this is probably their only chance to have any downtime between their next game, and I'm not gonna fucking do that to them right now, but maybe later, hopefully. And then, there was so many great like community sort of people that are like leaders of this community that were at Big Bad Con that I was just everywhere I looked, there was somebody I wanted to go talk to and had absolutely no time to do that. But yeah, I think I might just try to go to panels more next time or something because I'd love to get to talk to some of these people.
I got to meet Banana Chan, who I hadn't met before, but had like sort of interacted with on Twitter, and we were both running Kids on Bikes hacks at the same time, and so I just went over to like say hello, and she was the nicest, like just wholeheartedly kind person. One of the highlights was obviously meeting all the people, including Andy, who was watching this. Andy was a delight as well, and you, Kurt. I didn't know you. I didn't know I didn't know you, Lauren. I didn't know a lot of people. Yoshi, I didn't know you either. So this was like it was a life-changing experience. So thank you all for allowing that to happen.
Well, thank you so much. I was included in your list. I do remember looking at Yoshi at one point and saying, "Oh man, I really want to meet DC. Like they're so cool. I just want to. I love everything they do on Twitter. Mutants in the Night is such an awesome idea. Like I want to meet them." And then finally, Yoshi introduced me, and like I got to talk to them for like I don't know 5 minutes or something, and like forced my card into their hand. So DC, if you're watching this, hi. It was really nice to meet you. That was awesome.
Oh, and everybody was really nice to pose for the photo with the calculator for Epidia, who couldn't come to the con this year. So thank you to everybody who did that.
Okay. I am gonna wrap this unless someone forces me to talk about 16 Candles. No, everybody's good. All right, everybody's good.
I hear that you want to. No. I'm hearing that you need to go and take care of yourself, and I accept that, and I will back down and put on my mute button.
Well, thank you, Tomes. I appreciate you encouraging my self-care because this podcast is now an hour and a half longer than I expected it to be. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Dave, Lauren, Spencer, Tomes, Yoshi, thank you so much for joining me for this. And thank you so much to all the amazing, generous people that I got to meet this weekend. I really appreciated all the experiences that I got to have this weekend, and I would not trade Big Bad Con for any other con. So I will definitely be back next year. Any final thoughts? No, we're good.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, if you really, really need some more gaming, the Gauntlet is running GauntletCon this week, as in like 2 days from now, starting on Thursday. So if you want to maybe like look into that, you might be able to get into some freaking awesome games. And so that you can find more information at thegauntlet-rpg.com.
Yeah, like I know this real cool guy, right? His name is Kurt, and he's running a really fantastic game at GauntletCon. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but it's like magic, like stuff and lights and things like that. And
It's called Nuclear Night School, and it is 1980s nostalgia plus magic, and it is there is an open one, completely open.
Yeah, I fill a
for
spot on it.
slots. So,
So come play with me and Kurt, and it'll be amazing.
yeah, come play this game. It's gonna be fun.
That's Sunday, right?
That's Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific.
Oh man, okay. I'll see if I can sneak into that. That sounds great. I miss you guys already.
This is well. I'm glad I was able to spend 2.5 hours garnering enough credit to get people into my game for Sunday. I really appreciate everyone's effort. Anybody want to do shout outs or plugs or anything? Yep.
monkeyfunstudios.com. Find us on our website, Twitter, Drive Through RPG, Indie Press Revolution, Instagram, and God bless you, Google Plus. They did not know what they had.
Yes, indeed. And you have been listening to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast. This was a special episode, Big Bad Con recap. You can find it probably on YouTube tomorrow or the next day, and then on our podcast feed in the next couple of days. If you go look up Pixel Scandal Nerdcast in your podcatcher of choice. This has been an excellent wind down for my con drop. This was thanks for coming to my group therapy session, everybody. I really appreciate you hanging out in the chat. Thank you to our cast and how I end everything. Bye. I love you.